Good morning. We're going to go ahead today and we're going to be talking about hyperbolas, and it's going to be focused on these are problems from your quiz. So what's neat about when we go through this with your quiz is that on some of them they have the formulas for you guys. So if you're wanting to use the formulas, they have them for you guys in some of the problems. So it's great. They keep it nice and convenient for you guys as you go through. So let's go ahead. Let's see what kind of problems they're going to give us. So the thing is, they ask us for this one, what is the focus of the hyperbola? If we want to figure out what the focus is, we want our C value. If we want to know what the focus is, we want C. And we know that C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. So when we talk about a hyperbola, it's going to be a plus. Talk about ellipse, it's going to be a minus. So we need to figure out what is our C value. But they didn't give us A and B, but that's okay, because if we look at our graph here, these are going to be my vertices. These 2 points are what we call our co-vertices. And the distance from the center to our vertices is my A value. So in this case, A is 24. The distance from the center to my co-vertices is my B value. And in this case, B is going to be a value of 10. So I know A and B, even though they didn't tell me, it's because I could figure it out straight from my graph. So I could go ahead and I could fill in the pieces. I have C squared is equal to 24 squared plus 10 squared. C squared is equal to 24 squared is my 576 plus 100. C squared is equal to 676. Take the square root, and my C value is going to be just 26. So that tells me C. Again, it doesn't tell me exactly what my foci or my focus is, but I can easily figure that part out because my C, my focus, is always going to be always inside the parabolas. So I know I'm going to have a focus up here and a focus down here. And that distance is going to be 26 from my center. So I'm going to go up here to 26. This is my value of C is equal to 26. Then this point here is going to be a focus. If I go down 26, here is going to be my other focus. So if I go down a value of 26, there's my other focus. So I have a focus here at 0, negative 26. And here at 0, positive 26. I look over here, look at my answer choices, and there's my correct one. So again, to find my focus, I need to identify what my C value is. My next one asks, what statement about the hyperbolas is true? So only one of the statements is going to be true, the rest are going to be false. So again, we can go through, we kind of identify some pieces here. This is going to be a co-vertices. These are going to be my vertices. My centers at the origin, these would be my foci. So I look here and I go, okay, which statement is true? I have at the point negative 30 is a focus. So if I go to negative 30, that's this point right here, it says it's a focus. That's not true, because that's actually going to be a vertex, right? At the point 30 is a vertex. That's true. This is my vertex right here. We'd already labeled it. The transverse axis passes through the point 0, 2. 0, 2 is this point right here. But remember, our transverse axis goes from vertex to vertex. So this point is not on this line. This is what we would call our transverse axis. So that's gone your co-vertex piece. That's not correct. And then the transverse axis has an endpoint of 5, 0, 5, 0. So this one's kind of tricky. So when we talk about the transverse axis, we talk about it going across, but it's actually only connecting vertex to vertex. And this point 5, 0 is my focus, which is right there. And that's outside of it. So when we talk about the transverse axis, it's only going vertex to vertex. So the only one that's correct is this one here, that second one down. There's quite a few questions that are like that true, false, or which one is true. So sometimes they could be tricky. So just kind of break it apart and see, can you figure out what the mistake is? The next one says, which is a true statement comparing these two graphs? So which is true comparing the graphs? So when I look at this, because the x is first, I know that these graphs, these hyperbolas, are going to be opening left and right. Because the x is first, they're going to open along the x-axis. The x-axis goes left and right, then the parabolas are going to go left and right because this x value is before that negative. So when I look at this, it says the foci of both graphs are on the same point. So in order to figure out what that focus is, I want to see what is my c value. So remember, c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. So when I plug it in, c squared is equal to 6 squared minus 8 squared. Oh, sorry, plus. So for this one, I would get this value right here. If I found my c here, it'd be c squared is equal to 8 squared plus 6 squared. If I do 6 squared plus 8 squared or 8 squared plus 6 squared, I'm going to get the same number no matter what, right? 2 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 2. So aren't these c values going to be the same? Because it's addition, these would be the exact same c values. So if they're the same c values, they have the same distance from the center, and the graphs are both opening left and right, then they're both going to have the same foci. They're going to share that same foci. The lengths of the transverse axis are the same. Well, remember, when we talk about this length here, this is a value of a, right? This is a value of a. So if I wanted to know the length of it, it's 2a. So the length of my transverse axis is 2a. If I look at this first one, a is 6, so it'd be 2 times 6, which is 12. If I look at my second one, my a is 8, so it'd be 2 times 8, which is 16. They're not the same lengths. So this graph has a longer transverse axis, so this is not true. They do not have the same. This is not true. The directrices, this one, I'm just going to point this out. This isn't going to be correct. I have no idea what they're trying to do here. This is just a chaotic mess. This is an error in here. They have a typo on how they wanted to do this. I think they were trying to separate them, like they were supposed to do the one and then the other. So there is an error in there. This is a mistake in how the problem is written. So it doesn't really make sense on how they wrote it. It's not your answer choice. So the next one, it says the vertices are on the y-axis, while the vertices here are on the x-axis. And that's not going to be the case. When I look here, this is saying my vertices. Remember, these are going to be my vertices here. We're at the origin. So my vertices are going to be, when I'm going left and right, this axis here. What axis is this? This is going to be on the y-axis. They're going to be on the y-axis. So this one says on the x. That's not the case. They're both going to be on that y-axis. Now, when we talk about it, this is going to be 8 away. So for this one right here, here's my center. I would count 8, and I would count -8. So they would go like this. So these vertices, you can see, would be on that this one's on the x-axis. This one says the y. This is on the x-axis. So this one's here at 8. The difference is that this one's going to be at 6 and -6. That's the only difference there. So again, when we talked about this problem up here, that length of my transverse from here to here was a value of 12. From here to here was a value of 16. So you guys can see that, physically see that. So in this case, this is where my mistake is. Questions on that? So again, this one is just it's written in, it's not written in any proper math form. There's some type of error there. I don't know what they were trying to write. Questions on that? especially because there's that mistake in there. All right. So other types of problems you're going to see. I like when they do these ones when you have more than one option. I like when they at least tell you how many you're looking for. So that makes it kind of nice. So this one says, which statement about the hyperbolas is true? Select 2. And they give you this piece right here. This is part of the problem. Let me zoom in out just a smidge so that you guys can see all the answer choices. So they're focusing on asymptotes and directrix. So let's kind of see, well, where are things going to fall? What do they look like? So again, they have the formulas. I don't like to necessarily focus on the formulas. You guys probably noticed that. So let's go ahead. Let's label some things that I know. There's my center. These are my co-vertices. So if these are my co-vertices, distance from my center to my co-vertice, that is going to be at 2, 4 is a value of 6. So B is equal to 6. These are going to be my vertices. The distance from my center to my vertice is a value of 8. So A is equal to 8. So I know my A, I know my B. When we talk about the asymptotes, when we have our box here, my asymptote goes from corner to corner. So this is going to be my positive asymptote. So this would be y is equal to, and it's going to be positive, whatever the slope is. And I'll talk about that in 1 second. This one right here, from corner to corner, this line is in the negative direction. So this would be my y is equal to a negative, my slope of x. So what is that slope? Remember, slope is just going to be rise over run. And it's easy to see when you have these boxes here. When you're at your origin, I go up 1, 2, oh, we're counting by 2s, up 2, 4, 6, 8. So I went up 8, and I'm going to go over 2, 4, 6, over 6. Or what we could say is our A over our B, right? It's A over B, A over B. You need to make sure you match up which direction your graph is open. So this one is the one that we have where it's going to be opening up and down. This isn't simplified, so they wouldn't use that as an answer. So it's y is equal to, and it's going to be 4/3 x. Very similarly, same slope. They have the same slope. It doesn't, the directions just change, but it's the same slope. So this would be a negative 4/3 x. And again, all I counted was my rise over my run, so up and over, and simplify. The other thing that they point out are your directrices. So when we talk about that, where's our lines going to be? Our lines, if my parabolas are opening up and down, my transverse axis is going to be up and down. Then my directrices have to be perpendicular to the transverse axis. So they're going to be going left and right. They're going to be horizontal. They're going to be horizontal. So if I have a directrices that's horizontal, then it's going to go through my y-axis. So it has to be y equals. So it's y equals plus or minus. And we've done this one quite a few times, that you actually might have that one memorized, that it's a squared all over my c, a squared all over c. So a, easy peasy, we already have that, is 8 squared all over c. We don't have c though. That's okay, because we know c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. And c squared is equal to, my a squared is 8 squared plus my b, we said was 6, so 6 squared. C squared equals 64 plus 36. Ooh, this is a nice pretty one. It's going to be 100. Then C is going to equal 10. So this is just a value of 10. So I have y is equal to plus or minus 64 all over 10, which can be cleaned up to y is equal to plus or minus 32 all over 5. 2 goes into both of them. That's the greatest GCF. So let's go check down our list. We need 2 options out of here, 2. So there's a focus at 0, 12. Well, if my C is 10, then I would have a focus here at positive 10 and down here at negative 10. So that's incorrect. We would have one at 0, 10 or at 0, negative 10, because my C value is 10. I have an asymptote at negative 4/3 x. or I have one at y equals positive 3/4 x. This one is incorrect. It should have been a positive 4/3 x, but my negative 4/3 x is correct. That is correct. And then my next one, these are very similar, but one's an x, one's a y. My directrix is going to be at y equals a positive 32 or y equals a negative 32. So I would have, or 32/5. So I'd have one that's going to be up in here and one that's going to be down in here. But it's going to be a y equals. They're both going horizontally. They're both going to be horizontally. This is telling me that I would have a vertical line, and that is not correct. So this is the correct answer. So some of them, even if you didn't know the right value, you can kind of use your reasoning of like, okay, I know it's not going to be an x equals. You can use your process of elimination, kind of cross things off as you go through. And then my very last one, again, taking the information that they give you and, excuse me, solving for that missing piece. So I know that this is going to be my a squared. I'm looking for my b squared. So I do know a squared is 24. Got that piece. I also have this directrix is equal to 576/26. Well, remember, we just talked about this. My directrix is a squared all over c. So that tells me that this value has to be a squared. This value has to be c. Well, a squared, I had, oh, a squared is 24 squared. A squared is 24 squared. 24 squared is 576. That's the same a value. It has to be the same. So not only do I know then that my a is 24, I know from this as well that my c is 26. Can I solve for b? Yeah, pretty easily, because we keep going back to these same two formulas. This one and this one are the ones that we keep going back to here and here. So I know if I want b, then I want to use my idea that c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. 26 squared is equal to 24 squared plus b squared. 676 is equal to 576 plus my b squared. B squared is equal to 100, which tells me then that b has to be 10. And there's my answer. This one had numbers that we had already used, so it made it kind of easy because those were the same values that we had used in that first problem. So these values here, they kind of start to recycle numbers and they start to look familiar. Look, are the same values that we used in that first problem. So you kind of start to see some repetitiveness. They're not trying to give you crazy numbers. They're not having you work with radicals. They're trying to have you have pretty numbers, which is really kind of easier to work with. So those are all the examples I have from the quizzes. If you come across some problems on the quizzes and you're like, I have no idea, I don't get this one, send me a picture of it and I'll help you through it. Do you guys have any questions? You're welcome. All right, if you have anything, let me know, okay? Bye, dear.